Self-esteem and ego are easy to confuse because, from the outside, they often wear the same clothes. A person may speak with certainty, hold their ground, refuse to be diminished, walk away from what insults their dignity, and appear completely at ease with who they are. Sometimes this comes from real inner stability. Sometimes it comes from a wound that learned how to stand upright. A boundary can come from dignity or from fear. Silence can come from peace or from punishment. Confidence can come from inner stability or from a desperate need to keep the image from cracking. After all, we need some sense of self to move through the world. We need a center strong enough to make choices, hold boundaries, protect our dignity, and say, without apology, "This is me. This is where I stand." This center is what we usually call the ego, not as an insult, not as some dirty spiritual word, but as the structure that allows us to have a place in the world. Without it, we become porous. We dissolve into other people's expectations. We mistake self-erasure for humility and call it virtue. But something changes when this center is built around an unhealed wound. Then confidence becomes performance, boundaries become weapons, independence becomes isolation, strength becomes a posture we cannot relax. What began as protection slowly becomes an identity, and the person is no longer simply living from a self. They are defending a construction. This is where the confusion becomes dangerous, because the version of yourself you created to feel stronger may have helped you survive. It may have given you shape when you were collapsing. It may have protected something fragile when nobody else knew how to protect it. But what happens when that protection becomes a prison? What happens when the self you built to feel stronger is actually guarding a wound you have not yet learned how to touch? If ego and self-esteem can look alike, the next confusion is that ego inflation often feels like strength. And sometimes, for a while, it even works like strength. It gives shape to someone who felt shapeless. It gives voice to someone who was silenced. It gives posture to someone who was humiliated. It creates protection around a place that did not know how to protect itself. This is why an inflated ego is not just vanity. It is often a survival strategy that became overgrown. When the ego is healthy enough, it gives us a place to stand. But when it is organized around a wound, it begins to protect us from something we do not know how to feel. This is where the imitation begins. Self-esteem gives you ground. Ego inflation gives you height. And height can feel like ground when you are terrified of falling. A person who feels powerless may become obsessed with control. A person who feels invisible may become addicted to admiration. A person who carries shame may become allergic to criticism. So from the outside, you may see confidence, but from the inside, there is pressure. Pressure to maintain the image, pressure to stay above the wound, pressure to never be truly seen. This is one of the ways to tell the difference. Self-esteem can relax. Ego inflation has to keep proving. And because it has to keep proving, it becomes sophisticated. It can speak the language of empowerment, healing, boundaries, self-worth, standards, independence, discernment, authenticity. It can become spiritual, political, intellectual, rebellious, seductive, successful. It can even criticize ego while secretly feeding itself through the image of being beyond ego. A wounded ego rarely announces itself as wounded. It usually arrives dressed as certainty. It says, "I am just being honest," when it is afraid of being questioned. It says, "I have standards," when it is terrified of intimacy. It says, "I do not need anyone," when needing someone feels unbearable. It says, "I am above this," when it does not know how to be inside this without losing control. But beneath the certainty, there is often a person still waiting for permission to be imperfect. And this is where inflated ego begins to steal from the life it is trying to protect. Once you build an image to protect a wound, you must keep feeding the image. You must keep defending it. You must keep arranging reality around it. A part of you is no longer available for life because it has become the guardian of a construction. Ego inflation tries to rise above the wound. Self-esteem learns how to stay with it. Ego inflation says, "I must become bigger than this." Self-esteem says, "I can become honest enough to touch this." Because what the wound needs is not a larger image. It needs a more truthful relationship with the self that is wearing it. To tell the difference between self-esteem and ego, do not only look at how a person behaves when they feel strong. Look at what their strength costs them. Ego inflation can create a kind of strength, but it is expensive. It demands constant protection. What appears as confidence from the outside may feel, from the inside, like a private security job that never ends. Real self-esteem also gives strength, but it has a different cost. It asks for honesty, responsibility, and contact with reality. It may be uncomfortable, but it does not require you to live as a hostage to your own performance. That is one of the first signs. Ego inflation gives you an image to protect. Self-esteem gives you a self you can return to. The deeper cost of ego inflation is that you begin to lose direct contact with yourself. You start living through an intermediary, not the raw self, not the breathing self, not the uncertain and unfinished self that can be touched by life, but a curated version of you that must always remain coherent. At first, this may feel like power. The image gives structure, direction, and the illusion of control. But the illusion has a price. You become less able to learn because learning requires not knowing. Less able to apologize because apology requires the image to bow before reality. Less able to love because love requires being seen in places where performance cannot breathe. Less able to rest because rest is dangerous when your worth depends on maintaining a role. A wounded ego can be surrounded by attention and still feel alone because it may be seen constantly, but only through the mask. It may be praised, desired, feared, respected, or admired, while the real person remains hidden behind the very thing that was supposed to protect them. When what is loved is the mask, the person inside does not feel loved, they feel trapped. And this is one of the quietest forms of suffering, to receive validation for a self you cannot relax into. That is why inflated ego is never satisfied for long. It needs another victory, another mirror, another sign that the image is still working. And when the confirmation fades, the old fragility rises from underneath, asking the same question it has always been asking: am I still worth something? Inflated ego depends on confirmation. Self-esteem can receive confirmation, enjoy it, even be nourished by it, but it does not collapse when confirmation is absent. If you have real self-esteem, you can still feel hurt by rejection, embarrassed by failure, shaken by criticism. But these experiences do not become total. They do not turn into a verdict on the entire self, because you remain in relationship with yourself. If ego inflation is strength borrowed from an image, self-esteem is strength rooted in relationship. The relationship you are able to maintain with yourself when confirmation disappears. This is why self-esteem is often misunderstood. It is sold as a feeling, as if it were a pleasant inner climate we could permanently install inside ourselves. Feel good about who you are, believe in yourself, know your worth, repeat the right sentence in the mirror until the body obeys. But real self-esteem is not about feeling good all the time. It is not a mood, a slogan, or the fantasy of being exceptional, unshakable, and endlessly confident. It is a stable relationship with yourself, especially when the flattering images fall away. It is the ability to meet your own humanity without immediately turning it into a courtroom. You can see your confusion without declaring yourself hopeless. You can admit that you were wrong without collapsing into shame or escaping into justification. While ego inflation needs to edit the human being, self-esteem can include the full human being. Self-esteem is not the absence of fragility. It is the capacity to be fragile without becoming your own enemy. A person with self-esteem still hurts. They still doubt themselves. They still have moments of insecurity, immaturity, fear, defensiveness, and blindness. But they do not need to exile these parts in order to preserve an image of worth. Because self-esteem is not perfection, invulnerability, or superiority. It is the ability to be flawed, hurt, unfinished, and still remain on your own side. Real self-esteem does not need to dominate the space. There is humility inside it, but not the humility of self-erasure. The humility of someone who has stopped trying to tower over life and has finally learned how to stand inside it. And there is strength inside it, but not the brittle strength of the mask. It is the strength of a person who can stay present when something uncomfortable becomes true. So if you want to tell the difference, do not ask only, does this look confident? Ask, does this confidence create more honesty, or does it require more performance? Because real self-esteem does not make life painless. It makes truth survivable, and when truth becomes survivable, you no longer need to inflate yourself to avoid it. One of the clearest places to see the difference between self-esteem and ego is in the way a person responds when their image is questioned. Not because criticism is always fair. It often is not. Real self-esteem does not mean swallowing every judgment as truth, nor does it mean becoming permeable to every opinion that wants to enter your mind. But criticism has a strange power. It touches the boundary between who we think we are and how reality is meeting us. When the ego is built around a wound, criticism rarely arrives as information. It arrives as danger. The body hears an accusation, the image feels threatened, and suddenly the whole system moves into defense. The person may attack, dismiss, intellectualize, mock, withdraw, or turn the conversation into a trial of the critic's character. Anything to avoid the possibility that something true has been seen. Self-esteem responds differently, not perfectly or without pain. A person with self-esteem can still feel the sting, the heat, the shame, the resistance. But beneath the reaction, there is enough inner ground to ask, is there something here I need to see? That question changes everything. It does not surrender dignity. It does not hand power to the critic. It simply keeps the person in relationship with truth. Ego inflation needs to win against criticism. Self-esteem tries to metabolize it. It lets you sort criticism without being swallowed by it. What is false can be released, what is true can be received, and what is badly delivered can still contain something worth seeing. So if you want to tell the difference between ego and self-esteem, pay attention to what happens when the image is questioned. Does the person become more curious or more theatrical, more honest or more controlling? Are they protecting their dignity or protecting an image that cannot survive the truth? And ask this not only about other people, ask it about yourself. Because the wounded ego is easiest to see in others and hardest to recognize when it is wearing your own face. So the deeper question is, what am I protecting? Am I protecting my dignity, my boundaries, my integrity, my right to exist as myself? Or am I protecting an image that cannot survive the truth? Because the version of yourself you built to feel stronger may have been necessary once. It may have helped you survive. It may have kept you from collapsing. It may have given shape to something inside you that had no shape. So do not hate it. Do not turn the ego into another enemy. Listen to it, study it, ask what wound it has been guarding, and then slowly, honestly, begin to build something deeper. Not a bigger image, a truer foundation. Because real self-esteem is not the death of the ego. It is the healing of the ego's need to lie. It is what happens when the self no longer needs to inflate in order to exist. It can simply stand, human, imperfect, unfinished, and real.